Well, welcome everyone. It's 12 o'clock Central Time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you so much for joining today. We're glad that all of you could join, and particularly tomorrow, I think we'll all be glad that we are doing this remotely and not having to drive anywhere. Or at least, I don't know, I think it's affecting different parts of Kansas differently, but in any case, the part of Kansas where I am, I'm glad that we're not having to drive tomorrow. So my name is London Wadike, and I'm with K-State Research and Extension. And K-State Research and Extension and the Kansas Department of Agriculture are excited to have you join us for our farmers market / direct-to-consumer virtual workshops this year. I mentioned this yesterday too. I remember it was so much fun back in the day when we used to drive around and get to see a lot of you in person. But we're glad to see you online this year instead. We do have a great week of activities planned. So today from noon to 1, our topic is a sales tax guide for farmers markets in Kansas, and then as well as packaging your products and how to care for your scales. And then on Wednesday, so tomorrow, when the day that we'll be glad we're doing it virtually, you'll hear about meat and poultry regulations and what the Kansas Value-Added Foods Lab, the Value-Added Meats Lab has to offer. Yesterday, we talked about the Value-Added Foods Lab. On Thursday from noon to 1, you'll learn about accepting SNAP. That's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program from MarketLink. And then you'll also hear about the Double Up Food Bucks program from our colleagues with K-State Research and Extension. And then on Friday, that's our big day. That's from 8:30 to 1 o'clock. We will have our keynote speaker, Brian Copham of the Colorado Department of Agriculture. We'll be talking about best practices for business success, and that'll include pricing, displays, consumer interaction hints. He'll also talk about, another speaker will talk about marketing tips and tricks of how to engage with your consumers online, which is very important in today's society. How to identify common legal risks and best practices for managing them. Then we'll also have a senior farmers market nutrition program training, which I know is of interest to a lot of people, which is a great program. And then we'll also have some of our K-State and our K-State Research and Extension, as well as our Kansas Rural Center colleagues will be sharing vegetable production resources as well. So thank you again for taking time out of your day to be part of this effort by participating online with us today. So first, a few housekeeping items. And again, if you were with us yesterday, these are repeats, but if anybody's new, we want to just quickly go through them. So during the presentation portion, please be sure to keep your mics muted unless you're asking a question. If you do have a question during the presentation, please submit your question using the chat button, which is at the bottom of your screen, or you can raise your hand. That's on the reactions button. And then we'll be able to unmute you during the question and answer time to answer your question. Submitted questions and comments will be monitored by our KDA and K-State Research and Extension staff that are working on this workshop. If at any time during the webinar you do have a question when you're asking it, please include your name, city, and market or business if applicable, so that we can more easily answer your question appropriately. And it also helps to know who's in the room. I think people appreciate that. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted online for all participants. So as much as possible, the presentations will also be posted online, so you can refer back to it afterwards if you would like to review what you learned today. If you're selling pet treats or live plants, we have handouts and videos already posted on our website. And so in just a minute, one of my colleagues will be putting that in the chat for the direct link. You just scroll down below that register now button on the website, and then you'll be able to see the handouts and the videos in that place. Finally, if you registered by January 18 for this webinar series, and then you requested to receive copies of the regulations for farmers markets / direct-to-consumer sales and/or the food labeling publication or the food sampling publication as well. Hopefully you should have received those copies already in the mail. That's if you registered before January 18. If you registered after January 18, then you should receive those publications in the upcoming weeks. So you'll be getting those in due course here. If you did not indicate that you would like to receive the publications when you registered, or if you would like additional copies, please let us know. And there it is in the chat, the email address that you can email to let us know if you want to have additional handouts. So thanks again. We're glad that you all could join. And with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Janelle Dobbins with the Kansas Department of Agriculture. Janelle.
Thanks, Londa. And as she said, we are super excited to have you join us today. I'm Janelle Dobbins with the From the Land of Kansas program. And so we are going to first kick off with a quick poll to have you all answer. It's going to be talking about what products are you currently selling or interested in learning more about. So as you can see, your options are baked goods, canned foods, other prepared foods, eggs, dairy products, honey, or if you scroll down just a little bit more, depending on how large your box is, other is another option. So we're just going to give you here about 30 seconds to get these answered. As we know, we have a wide range of folks from ones who are selling direct to consumer off the farm, ones who are selling at farmers markets, and also folks who are farmers market managers. Give you another quick 5 seconds here to get those answers in. I was going to say, and I know some folks are popping it into the chat box, which is perfectly fine too. Okay, so let's take a look here. So it looks like we have a large 86% is doing produce, and then we have a almost tie with baked goods and canned goods at 46 and 49%. And then we do have eggs coming in at 30%, honey at 28. And so that's kind of what we're looking at there to see what you guys are selling. So first up today, thanks very much for taking that survey. So first up, we are going to be talking about sales tax, because as we all know, that is a very big deal, and it's not as hard as it sometimes makes it out to be. So we're going to start with Lisa Lycum Jones with the Kansas Department of Revenue, and she's going to talk you through the sales tax guide, and we will learn some more about that, and then we will have Q&A with Lisa afterwards.
Hello, I'm Lisa Lycum Jones with the Kansas Department of Revenue Special Events, and I'm here today to help talk about sales tax and how farmers markets handle that. So how are the sales tax revenues used? The local schools, roads, public health, city and county services, police and fire, snow removal, parks and recreation, fairs, and other local projects. So what does the sales tax apply? Any retail sale of tangible personal property, rental or lease of tangible personal property, admissions on amusement, entertainment, recreation services, or entry fees for participation in race events, etc. Some examples, tangible personal property would also include food. The rental and lease would be cars, tools, or video games. And some examples of admissions would be the tickets to sporting events, plays, and movies. Who must collect and remit the sales tax? Almost every vendor must collect and remit sales tax on items sold in Kansas. That includes most not-for-profit entities, as listed here. Even if 100% of the proceeds go to a not-for-profit group, a vendor must collect and remit sales tax on anything sold in Kansas. Some of the most common questions that KDOR hears from new businesses are listed as, I registered my business, now what do I need to do? What is taxable? How do I find the correct sales tax rate in jurisdictions? How do I know when a tax rate changes? And I'm selling on Amazon, who reports and pays the sales tax? Really, as a business, this is one of the tools of your trade. You owe sales tax and use tax as the end user of the equipment, fixtures, tools, and other taxable non-inventory items purchased. So what is taxable? The list is really quite lengthy, but here is the top few where they are described for a sale. All sales are taxable unless specifically exempted by law. We have some references on each one of these pages, the subsections of where these can be looked up if you like. As a business, you owe sales tax as the end user. Exempt organizations, requirements and procedures are also listed in publication KS 1550, is for the sales and use tax for agricultural industry. For internet sales, no sales tax is necessary if it's shipped outside of Kansas. If it's shipped within Kansas borders, sales tax is due. Use the KDOR tax rate lookup tool at ksrevenue.gov to find the tax rate for the shipping address. If your business purchases items from outside Kansas for non-inventory use and doesn't pay sales tax equal to your jurisdiction tax rate, your business owes what is called Consumers Compensating Use Tax. This would be, as an example, on display racks, shelving, office supplies, tools, etc. You can identify the correct Kansas taxing jurisdiction by using, we have a link out there for tax rate locator that'll be included on the last page of this presentation. So what is destination-based sourcing? Here is the actual description of that, but it basically is sales tax collected by the seller from the buyer and remitted to KDOR by that seller. The sales tax is sourced to the seller's business location if the buyer receives the merchandise there. If the merchandise is shipped or delivered to the buyer, the seller will collect the combined sales tax in effect at the location where the purchaser receives the items. If the merchandise is purchased by the buyer but shipped, delivered to third party, the sales tax is sourced to the third party location provided by the buyer. Kansas has over 900 sourcing destinations, which is also called a taxing jurisdiction. The seller is responsible for identifying that correct jurisdiction and charging and remitting the correct amount of sales tax to that jurisdiction. Charge the rate of sales tax in effect where the customer takes delivery of the item sold or where the services is first used. So the difference between income tax and sales tax is often something that we have to educate folks on. Income tax is actually a tax paid on the money that a person or business receives as income, taxable income, which is the total income less allowable deductions. Sales tax has very few deductions that are applicable, a tax that is added to the sale price of goods and services that is calculated by a percentage, collected by the seller from the consumer at the point of possession. So again, all sales are taxable unless exempted by law. Paying sales tax is the duty of your customer. It is unlawful for a customer to refuse to pay the sales tax due on a taxable transaction. When added to the purchase price of taxable goods, the sales tax is a debt from the consumer to the retailer, and as such is recoverable by the retailer from the customer in the same manner as any other debt. In collecting sales tax, you are acting as an agent or partner with the Department of Revenue. A retailer holds the tax in trust for the state and then sends it to the Department of Revenue. So how to file taxes within the state of Kansas? If you are registered with the state, you can file your state taxes online at ksrevenue.gov. For unregistered vendors, we try to make that easy with our special events sales tax return, but they must meet certain requirements. You may not participate in more than 4 events in a 12-month period. You must remit sales tax for each event attended within 30 days, and failure to remit sales tax may result in being registered and assessed. So actually, if you use the ST16 that you receive from the coordinator, it has your jurisdictional code information and sales tax rate for the pertinent information that you need to file, whether that be online or whether you use the special events return. So here's what the event certificate looks like. It is now a 2-page return, which is a change this year. The first page has the event certification, and it shows the name of the event and where it's located at in the state of Kansas. There are some instructions on how to manage this certificate and what you should do about filing. Then the second page actually is the return itself. So it notes the event name, the jurisdiction code, the actual sales tax event assigned to that event, the beginning and end dates, the due dates, and it asks if you are already registered for you to check the first box and give us what your sales tax number is, which starts with an 004, or if it is a compensating use, an 005, your name and your email information. If you do not have a sales tax number, then you check the second box, please, and continue on with the sales tax return at the bottom of the page. So this is where you will actually fill in your gross sales, which is the total collected amount minus the sales tax. So if you are selling produce using a government voucher as your currency for either the SNAP program or the Double Up Bucks program, you would remove that, you would subtract it from your gross sales and put that in this line 1, okay? The cost of merchandise consumed would be whether or not you're giving out any samples from your inventory. That would go on line 2. Line 3 is your subtotal of those, line 1 and 2. The sales tax collected is expressed in a decimal so that you can do your mathematics with that. And then the sales tax due is listed on line 5. That is the actual return. So the sales tax return instructions, again, if you are registered, include those numbers with your name and contact information. If you do not have a sales tax number that you're going to use to file online, here are your payment options available. You can send us a check, a cashier's check, money order, or use a Visa, MasterCard, credit card. Check 1 or complete the information below. Do not send cash. We are not able to process that efficiently. You can tell us whether or not you've enclosed a check for the total amount. With your printed name and signature, we can then go ahead and process that with electric funds transfer. If you authorize the Department of Revenue, we can process a payment for the total due from your MasterCard or Visa, understanding that there will be a 2.5 fee added to the processing company. And we'll need your credit card number, the traditional expiration date, and the 3-digit. So we have an example here of reporting sales tax in the price. So rather than break out a calculator every time she sells a jar of jellies, Kelly has taken her sales total from April through October, which was $1,200. The tax rate was 8.95 in her jurisdiction. So the total collected minus the total collected divided by the 1.80895 is what will be subtracted from the total to get your gross sales. So in order to determine how much sales tax she's collected over the course of the season, Kelly needs to know the total amount she collected and the sales tax rate. So there's where the math comes in. So in order to find that out, how much sales tax she collected, she needs to divide the total collected by 1 plus the sales tax rate expressed as a decimal. So she divides $1,200 by 1.0895 and gets the $1,101.42. That is her gross sales total that she will write in line 1 of the ST16. In order to find out how much sales tax she needs to send to KDOR, she subtracts her gross sales total from her total collected and gets the $98.58. So on the return, she would fill out line 1 to be the total amount, and that would be less any amount that she has used for SNAP or double up programs, anything that does the government vouchers, or if she has made sales to someone with a retailer sales tax certificate. Line 2 would be merchandise consumed if she's given out any examples of samples for her product. Line 3 is the subtotal of line 1 and 2. The tax rate is again listed on the return at decimal of 0.0895. So when you do the math, the tax due is 109.19. So filing your sales tax with a registered sales tax number, you go through account management off of the kswebfile.gov website. And once your business is registered, you will get a ID number that is assigned to you. We start with a 004 for sales tax. And you should always request this to be a non-fixed filer so that you can make sales in any jurisdiction. If you've got some additional questions, the taxpayer assistance line number listed here can help you with that form fill out. So if once you are actually registered and you have your ID numbers, you'll go to the ksrevenue.gov, select customer service from that header section, and sign in using your email and password PIN. To collect, you click on the account management and the account listing screen, the blue stripe above the empty boxes, and you can add or register a new account for this login with this registration identification number for sales tax. Add the ID number and the access code, click continue, save that, and you are now set up to pay online, and that will be available to you at every time that you dial into customer service. So you may question how you find the correct sales tax and jurisdiction code. Again, this is our website. You click on the business tax, click on the calculate sales tax tab, and you can enter the address, and you will be required to use the zip code. The +4 option will give you the most correct tax rate, and you can print that screen for your records. Now do remember that tax rate changes are effective the first of every quarter, and it is your responsibility to use that and confirm. So if you'd like to sign up for rate change email notifications, you can. There's also, to verify any zip code information, you can go out to the USPS site and go to the zip lookup action, and you can get that information from the U.S. Postal Service. This is what the sales tax rate locator looks like on our website for the Kansas Department of Revenue. So as a coordinator responsibility, what we'd like to hear from you is about a month before, contact your special events agent. You can send in the packet request form that tells us the name and the dates of your event, about how many vendors you expect to be attending, and we can get those vendor returns back out to you and your mailing address. We can, 2 weeks before the event, if you would like tax clearance research for your vendors, we can set that up as well off of an initial vendors list. Here is the state of Kansas areas that have been assigned. We have 4 special event agents at this time, and those are our contact information. And we have a general mailbox for KDOR_special.events that we can reach at any time. So during the event, we request that you make each vendor aware they have this return available. If you'll distribute that for us, and ask them to display their registration so that the consumers know that all of the vendors will be charging sales tax. After the event, you've been provided a format of the vendors list. We ask that you return that to us. Why do we need a vendors list? Actually, it's a progressive collection. Efforts begin about 45 days after each event ends. And from farmer's market, we do recognize the number of weeks participating does not necessarily matter. If a vendor only comes once during the season, they need to receive a form and they need to be included on the vendor's list. Although we do look at their return date for remittance to be the entire season from the beginning to the end date of the farmer's market. So failure to remit the sales tax could result in a number of issues as far as tax clearance denial for other events, compulsory registration and assessment for sales tax, and other potential legal tax warrants. Here is the vendor list example. And at a minimum, we need to have a postal mailing address. The digital format is recommended either in Excel or a Google Sheet. And when you receive your packet request, we send out an email with this template. So all you have to do is fill it in and mail it back. So we have had some uptick in farm winery sales at farmers markets. So these are not exempt from sales tax, although they cannot be made on state-owned property. You must obtain an annual permit to sell at the farmers markets from the Alcohol, Beverage, and Tobacco Department. Sell only domestic wine in the original unopened containers that was produced and bottled by the licensee. It's a given that it must be 21 to sell the wine, and you must remit and pay monthly liquor enforcement tax returns as well. That link is located at the end of this. So how can we help? I know there was a famous quote from Ronald Reagan that once said, "The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are 'I'm from the government and I'm here to help.'" But we truly do want to answer as many tax questions as you have, find you the right resources, provide the required forms, provide that tax assistance, educate when it comes to filing and remitting and registering, work with you as a coordinator, as a vendor, and the local authorities, and to affect sales tax compliance. So with any questions, I'll put up this screen and say thank you. Here are some links that may be quite beneficial for you to use, and I will accept any questions at this time.
Thanks, Lisa. That was really great information. And I know we have a whole bunch of questions that have been coming in the chat box. So I'm going to turn it over to Dana Ladner with the Kansas Department of Agriculture, and she will get those answered for everyone.
Great.
Very
Thanks,
good.
Janelle. Lisa, we have a good set of questions, so we're going to get right to those and get some answers for folks. The first one is about resale sales and what's required for the business who is selling the item to the vendor that is then who will resell it.
Okay, as the initial vendor, it would depend on whether or not they bought that product wholesale. Okay, so when you're selling to another vendor that's going to resell that, they should provide you their sales tax information so that they are not charged as the end user the sales tax amount. All right, so this would be critical for both of those vendors to be registered so that they have a sales tax number certificate and they can show each other. That way you can sell wholesale to another vendor that is considered wholesaling, and then the end user, the end customer, is the one that's going to be paying the actual sales tax to that middleman, if you will. Does that help?
That does help. Great. Early on in your presentation, you talked about how many events you could sell at, etc. So is the farmers market season considered one event? So if a season's 26 events, is that one event, or is that one event at that location? And if they sell at a second location, that's a second event. If you could clarify just a little bit on that.
Yes, absolutely. Farmers markets, and there are some other flea market type scenarios that we do consider it as a season. So farmers market at one location would be an event from, say, April through October at one location. Now, if that vendor moves from, I'm just going to throw out Garnett to Parsons to Ottawa and sells in 3 different locations, each one of those is going to be a separate event. And that would count as 3 events for that vendor. So that person would need to look at the tax rate for that jurisdiction and submit a remittance for each one of those farmers markets that would be most likely ending in the fall. If they choose to just go to one weekend to test out, let's say Parsons is too far for them, they just go there for once, they would still be responsible for filing for that one weekend at that other location.
Great, thank you. On that same line on exemptions or et cetera. So if a person is going to rent a building that's on their farm for a party, is that taxable?
The rental of property is not taxable, of real estate, if you will. But if that person is providing any chairs, tables, decorations, any of those types of additional items, those would be tangible property that would require sales tax, and they should be listed separately on the invoice.
Got it. Great. Thank you. We're going to transition a little bit to the actual payments. So how does a farmer's market vendor become approved to pay only one sales tax payment for the whole season? They're currently required to file monthly, 12 months out of the year, but they only sell for 4 months. So then they file 0 returns for 8 months. Is there anything more clear cut on that, or do they just need to stay with that type of a system?
No, there is something better they can do. They can actually have their account online marked as an occasional filer, and they will declare what months that they will be making sales. So they could select April through August as an example, and that's when they would be required to file a return, whether there was 0 sales or not. It's on their declared months. So if they would call the taxpayer assistance number that was given, they can assist them with doing that occasional filer.
Got it. Well, super. We've made a lot of transitions in the last couple of years on automation. Can those paying in still pay by check or not automatic withdraw on things? How is that currently set up?
We have just made, by our transition to the 2-page form within special events, we're attempting to add them more options. So if they do not have a registered number and they are paying through special events, they can now pay with a check like they always have, check or money order. They can also check the option to have an electronic transfer with a signature for us to give off authorization, or they could provide us information on a credit card. If they are a registered vendor, then they still have the option of having an electronic transfer directly from their bank account, or they can mark their return as pay with voucher and send in a check. Those are the 2 options online.
Got it. I want to take just a few more questions. We can get real quick, Lisa, before we transition to the next speaker. With it, when you're paying sales tax that's due, when you pay yearly, if you're only paying yearly,
Right.
when
I'm
is
sorry,
that
what was
due?
the question? When was it due if you're an annual filer?
Yes.
It's due by the 25th of January, the 25th of the end of the prior month. It's due by the 25th of January for annual filers.
Super. I know that there's some legislation working through on grocery sales tax exemptions. Has your team discussed, will produce sold at farmers markets be included in that grocery sales tax exemption?
it's a great discussion. And yes, we have submitted the question, but legislation has not provided any response at this time.
Great. I have one last question, and hopefully we'll have a short answer on that. Is there recourse if a company, corporation, or person collects more sales tax than is required? An example is a well-known shipper that has a smile on their box is collecting 9% sales tax from this specific person when they deliver to my business, but the tax rate in their jurisdiction is 7.5%. And this is for indirect supplies.
That would have to, I mean, it would have to be education through Amazon, the actual shipper. At this time, I would have to find if we've got a recourse from this end or not. There's some questions about compensating use tax and that type of thing. If I could have their contact information, I'll follow up with them about that, and you will post it as an afterthought. I don't have the answer.
Perfect. We will get back to that person directly. With
Yes.
that, Janelle and team, let's go ahead and transfer to our next person.
Great, thanks, Dana. Okay, so next up is going to be Lauren Minnick with our weights and measures team, and he's going to be speaking about packaging for your products and how to care for your certified scales. So let's hear from Lauren.
Hello, my name is Lauren Minnick. I'm the Marketplace Equity Protection Program Supervisor for the Kansas Department of Agriculture, Division of Weights and Measures. I've been a presenter at previous farmers market workshops, and I've also certified scales at some of the farmers market workshops. Today we're going to talk about scale care, packaging and labeling, and method of sale. Let's talk about scale care first. Commercial scales must be traceable to a National Type Evaluation Program Certificate of Conformance. They need to have been certified within the last 365 days, either by a technician licensed in the state of Kansas or by one of our weights and measures inspectors. You are required to retain the inspection report for up to 5 years, and it should be kept with the device at all times. Commercial scales must be kept level at all times. Portable scales are the only scales suitable for farmer market use, so make sure you keep your scale level. It should be positioned so the customer can view the weighing and measuring operation and the scale indication. And it should be positioned so that there's clearance provided around the load receiving element or the live part of the scale. Caring for commercial scales. Make sure you're storing it properly, either when moving it from one location to the next or at the end of the season. When you're moving it from one location to the next, make sure it's not jolted or jarred. You may consider having a special container made or creating a special container to store your scale that's got padding. When it's stored for the season, protect it from dust, rodents, insects, etc. You don't want some mud daubers getting in there and building the nest. That'll cause problems. Allow the scale to acclimate to changes in temperature. If you're getting out of a hot car during the fall into a cool parking lot, give the scale some time to adjust to that new temperature. Same thing in the summer. If you're getting out of an air conditioned car into a hot parking lot, give that scale a little time to acclimate. Proper setup. The structure supporting the scale should firmly and stably support the weight of the scale, plus anything weight on the scale, and then any other items displayed near the scale. You don't want a table that has a lot of deflection that can affect the accuracy of the weighment. And remember to level the scale before each use. Prepackaged scales. When you're determining the net contents of a package that is a commercial application, the scale has to meet many of the same requirements. It should be level to ensure accuracy. The main exception is you won't have a customer there, so you don't have to be concerned with the customer being able to view the weighing and measuring transaction. This year, we again plan to offer certification at various extension agencies. If you're unable to attend one of those scale certification sessions and you need to get your scale certified, you can visit our website and download a list of licensed service companies, Kansas, or you can call our office at the number listed here or email us and request a copy. We also could make arrangements for Weights and Measures Inspector to certify your device if you're willing to meet them in a place that's agreeable to you and the inspector. Packaging and labeling. There are three things required on a package: the declaration of identity, declaration of responsibility, and the declaration of quantity. So what's in the package, who's responsible for it, and how much is in the package. The declaration of identity must be located on the principal display panel. That's the panel that faces the customer when the item is typically displayed for retail. You either have to have the name specified or required by law, or you can use a common or generic name if there is no name specified by law. The declaration of responsibility has to be conspicuously located on the label of the package, and that applies to either the manufacturer, the packer, or the distributor of the package, whoever is going to take responsibility for that item. The information required on the package includes the name, address, and zip code of the responsible party. Again, either the manufacturer, the packer, or the distributor. The address can be omitted if it's available via a public source, whether that's a website or a phone book or some other listing. And it only pertains to packages that are sold at a place other than where they're packed. Declaration of quantity. Here are the general guidelines. If it's a solid, the quantity should be declared by weight or mass. If it's liquid, it should be declared by fluid volume. Or if it's certain commodities that are sold on a dry basis, they should be declared by dry measure. There are some exceptions. If there's an established trade custom, for example, mayonnaise is a solid, but it's sold by fluid volume, and ketchup and salsa are liquids, but they're sold by weight. It is acceptable then to declare it in a different manner. Otherwise, it needs to be based on those general guidelines. There are prohibited terms. You cannot exaggerate the amount of the commodity in the package. Here's some examples indicating a giant quart, a larger liter, a full gallon, when packed, a minimum or not less than. As you can see in the example here, this quantity is stated as a minimum net weight of 2.5 pounds. That's considered exaggerating the quantity. For random weight packages, they have a slightly different labeling requirement. It must contain the net weight, the unit price, and the total price. Method of sale, selling by weight, measure, or count. When you declare the quantity, the purpose is to give the consumer adequate information so they can make price comparisons. We're going to talk about specifically berries and small fruits, other fruits and vegetables, and other commodities. Berries and small fruits. So berries include all fruit whose name ends in berry, and small fruits that include but aren't limited to cherries, currants, cherry and grape tomatoes. So any fruit that's smaller in size. These commodities must be offered for sale and sold by either weight or volume. Berries and small fruits, if they're sold by volume, they must be sold in measured containers, so a container that's specifically designed to hold a certain quantity, and can be sold in 1/2 pint, 1 pint, or 1 quart measured containers. Whether they're covered or not, the measured containers themselves should not be packages for labeling purposes. So here's a table of other fruits and vegetables. If you're selling by count, you can only sell by count from bulk. So once you package it, they either need to be labeled by weight or dry measure according to the table. So count includes head or bunch. So you can sell, for example, cabbage or lettuce can be sold by head of the bunch. You know, one head, one bunch. Other fruits and vegetables. So again, there's various ways you can sell different commodities. Just be familiar with the type of commodity you're selling, whether it's weight or dry measure or count. And again, count is only for items that are sold from bulk. If it's packaged, it has to be labeled with weight or dry measure. Can I sell by the lug? A lug's a box or a crate used for transporting fruit. A lug is not a unit of measure. If you're buying by the lug, you're actually buying by net weight. Each lug should be designated with a specific net weight. So the answer is no, you cannot sell by the lug. You can sell by net weight. So if you want to resell the lug based on the net weight it contains, that's fine. Otherwise, if you're selling by dry measure, you have to sell by a half pint, 1 quart, 1 peck, or 1 bushel. Those are the only acceptable dry measure quantities. Acceptable containers. Ziploc bags or plastic bags or plastic containers that aren't specifically designed to hold a certain quantity are not allowed. You have to purchase dry measure containers similar to the examples on the right. Presentation of price for dry measure. It's not acceptable just to advertise by the basket. On the right, I've indicated an acceptable way to indicate what the size of each price point is. So a $3 basket is a half pint, $5 basket, 1 pint, so on and so forth. If it makes it easier for the customer, you may consider displaying empty containers that are marked with the container size. So you see the example of a 1 pint container or a 1 quart container, then the customer can associate that container with the price. Things that must be sold by weight include bread, butter or butter-like spreads, flour, cornmeal, hominy grits, meat, poultry, and fish, and seafood. With the exception of shellfish, it can be sold by weight measure or count when in the shell. Other commodities should follow the general guidelines in this table. Presentation of price when selling by net weight. You have to advertise your price per pound. So the example on the left is not acceptable. The example on the right is my suggested way. So if you want to reduce the price for increased quantities, for example, $4 a pound if you buy less than a pound, $3 a pound if you buy between 1 pound and 2 pounds, and $2.50 a pound if you're buying more than 2 pounds. That encourages people to buy a little more, save a little money. Make sure when you're selling by net weight that you deduct the tear of the packaging. So either you can program tear into your scale if it's capable of doing that, or make sure that you're placing the container on the scale and zeroing it out before you put any of the commodity in the container, or you know what your container weighs and you can deduct that from the weight to charge the customer by net weight. Selling by count, fruits and vegetables can be sold individually from bulk by count, so by the each, but once they're packaged, they must be sold by net weight or dry measure. Here's an example of tomatoes that are sold as a 4 count. They have to have a net weight identified or be sold using dry measure. Questions?
Okay, thanks, Lauren. One, as a reminder, we will be also putting all of this information up on the website. There will be both a recording of the of this, but we'll also put the actual presentation because there were lots of specific points about what you can or can't use or information there. So that might make it easier for you to see, but I will turn it over again here to Dana, who will work on asking all the questions that have been in the chat to Lauren directly.
Great, thank you. And Janelle, you beat me to it. There were so many great examples on there that Lauren, you provided for those on today and who will be watching. So that's great to have that. Lauren, one question that has come in is, can a vendor put a sign out that says that the scales have not been certified, or do they have to have a certified scale? We talked a lot about different things during your presentation. So certified or a note says I'm not certified.
So that's a question we get quite often. So if you're going to sell by weight, you have to have a certified scale and you have to sell by net weight. We don't allow any commodities to be sold by approximation. So you will see in grocery stores, if you're in the produce section, you might see those scales that are hanging there and they say estimation purposes only. That's to give the consumer an idea of how much they're purchasing before they get to the point of sale, and the items they're buying are actually legally weighed and the net weight is determined. But you have to sell by net weight. You can't sell by approximations. And if you're selling by net weight, you must use a certified scale.
Great, thank you on that. A question on the declaration of commodity. Do you need to list both ounces and grams, or can you use ounces or grams?
So for a package that there's two requirements. If it's not a random weight package, it has to have both the U.S. customary units, so pounds, ounces, fluid ounces, and it also has to have the metric declaration, or the SI declaration, which is in grams or kilograms or liters. So you do have to, excuse me, I forgot to turn on my video. You do have to have both declarations if it's a standard package. So a standard package is so if you're selling, let's say, cookies, and you want to sell 12-ounce packages of cookies, then it has to have to have the U.S. customary unit, 12 ounces, and then a gram equivalent or kilogram equivalent. And there's all kinds of regulations that decide whether you how you declare that, and it's usually the largest whole unit. So once you get above 12 ounce or 16 ounces, excuse me, or when you get to 16 ounces, then you have to declare it by 1 pound, and then the gram equivalent. Once you get above, once you get to 1,000 grams, then you have to declare by 1 kilogram. So it depends on the size of the package, but if it's a standard weight package, so each package has the same amount, then it has to have both declarations. If it's a random package, so and that's usually you'll see that in meat departments or in the deli department where they're packaging things like coleslaw or macaroni salad. Each of those may have just a unique net weight, 1.01 ounces. Those can just have the customary unit, but they have to meet other requirements. So you have to have a unit price, a net weight, and then a total price on those packages. So if it's a random weight package, even if it's prepackaged somewhere else, it has to meet the requirement for random packages. If it's a standard package, then it has to meet the requirements for standard packages, and they're a little different. So if you've got more specific questions about that, you can either email our office or give me a call on the number that was on the presentation.
Got it. So that's a lot of information you gave us.
Yes, it
right
was.
There. So I want to focus a little bit. We've had a couple questions on baked goods, and you kind of went over that a little bit. So a point blank question is, So loaves of bread and cinnamon rolls are sold by weight, not count. Is that correct?
Yes, cinnamon rolls, cakes, anything that you would buy at like a bakery has to be sold by weight. It's bread is specifically bread. Excuse me, what any kind of bread, and I'm sure there's a FDA definition for bread somewhere. But if even any of your bakery like dessert products, cookies, cakes, muffins, cupcakes, all those things have to be sold by weight. There's not a specific method of sale like there is for bread, but there isn't it. Those have to be sold on those general guidelines I talked about. So if the solid, semi-solid, or mixture, then it has to be sold by weight. And obviously, cookies, cakes, cupcakes are solid, so they have to be sold by weight.
Got it. And being this is during the lunch hour, that just kind of made me want to go have some sweet stuff with it.
Right.
So
That's right.
I want to go back to a little bit when you were talking about bulk items. So can I put the question is, can I put canner tomatoes in a flat and price the entire flat as a bulk item? Can I put canner tomatoes in a flat and price the entire flat as a bulk item?
You can, but it has to have a net weight statement associated with that. So, if you want to sell a flat of, 5 pounds, then it has to be marked as 5 pounds, or your sign would say each flat, 5 pounds, $5, or wherever the price you determine. But it has to be either by dry measure. So smaller berries have different requirements than other fruits and vegetables. So like tomatoes could be sold as in a measure container up to excuse me, bushel even, but it has to be a dry measure container. You can't just take a cardboard flat and call that a quart or a peck and sell it as a unit. If you're going to have a flat like that, my suggestion would be to weigh each one, put tomatoes in each one and weigh them each and say, this is, the price I pay or price I'm charging. And the drawback of that is customers want to pick and choose. They might see one flat but there's a couple tomatoes in there that they want to switch out. Well, then it affects the weight of that package. So that's kind of the drawback of selling it that way. So yeah, it seems to be very complicated, but your two choices are sell by net weight, whether that's a declared net weight, like on a prepackaged item, or by dry measure when you're selling from bulk.
Okay, I want to bring the whole team in on this last question. Lauren, Lisa, Londa, Janelle, Rebecca, anybody here on the team for this question? And you can each kind of answer as you see. What responsibility or liability does a market organizer have in enforcing packaging, sales tax, and other requirements? So we've talked a little bit about some really important things today. So what's the responsibility of a market organizer for enforcing?
Do you want me to go first since I'm...
You can sure go first.
Okay. So it's the responsibility of Kansas Department of Weights and Measures to enforce the packaging, labeling, weighing requirements. But I think it's the big thing, Weights and Measures, we always want to seek equity. So my suggestion to market managers is, if you want to provide some equity to your vendors, education is the best way to go about it. If there's a vendor that maybe isn't aware of the requirements, either point them in a direction so that they can find out what they need to know, or if you have that information, share it with them. But we don't expect you to enforce our laws and regulations.
And I was going to say, I brought this up yesterday. on the meeting. Some of the farmers markets have chosen to do agreements with their vendors, and on that agreement that they have them sign, the market manager or the market as a whole will note that the responsibility of following all sales tax, following weights and measures rules, everything falls on the vendor. And so that is always also a way that a market can decide to handle it. And I know everyone is always, as Lauren would say, we know everyone is always trying to do the best. And so if they have questions and stuff also on a particular vendor or just for market questions, always feel free to reach out to any of us at KDA and we will help figure out those answers for them. So I think, Dana, is that all the major questions?
I have one more, but Londa, did you have anything to add on that one?
No.
Okay. Lauren, one last quick question for you, and then we'll turn it back to Janelle and her team. Can you get a scale certified that's not NTIP?
No, the simple answer is no. Unless there's one exception. If the scale was placed into commercial service before 1986, and you've got documentation that indicates that it can continue to be used and it can be certified. But if you buy a scale that doesn't have an NTIP certificate or isn't traceable to an NTIP certificate, it can't be placed into service for commercial use if it's never been used in Kansas before. So the simple answer is you need an NTIP scale.
Great, thank you for that and for your time today. And Lisa, for your time, I'll turn it back over to the coordinating team.
Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. That was a great session. Lots of great questions, and thank you very much to Lauren and to Lisa for presenting. Really appreciate that. And again, thanks to Ray for your questions. That's what makes these webinars really valuable, I think, is your great questions. So, speaking of how valuable the session is, hopefully it is valuable, but we do have on Friday afternoon, you'll be sent an email with a link to an evaluation survey. So we really do want your input on what's valuable, what's not as valuable, how we can improve this. So please, when you get that link to the survey on Friday afternoon, please make sure you fill it out to help us out with that. As a reminder, as has been mentioned already today, you will receive an email next week with a link to all the recordings. So you can rewatch these if you need to, or share them with your vendors, etc. And then I really want to give a huge shout out to our funders for this session. All the publications that we've mentioned that you can get copies of for free. You know, there is shipping costs involved and printing costs. So we really appreciate the Kansas Center for Sustainable Agriculture and Alternative Crops, it's KSAC, and the Kansas Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program, that's SARE, and that's Carrie Ebert is the holder of those funds, so really appreciate her. KSRE and the Kansas Department of Agriculture also have helped to support this webinar series. So we hope to see you tomorrow or later this week for all of our additional sessions. And if you have questions, please, there it is in the chat. Janelle put it in the chat. So you can put that in the chat. And I see there's a last question there. So yes, the recorded sessions will be posted on the From the Land of Kansas website for future viewing. So thanks again, everyone. It's 1:04, so we're going to sign off and we'll see you tomorrow morning or tomorrow at noon, sorry. And let's hope everybody's internet and electricity are on at that time. So thanks again, everyone. See you tomorrow.